panel today is the future of cannabis tourism in the Big Apple and beyond. And I am super excited about this panel because I like to go to, cannabis tourism events. So let's do it. We have great leaders in the industry. We have Precious Hester Brown, a dear friend from Rochester, New York, who is the founder and CEO of Entertaining and Elevating with Cannabis. We have Ariel, Palitz, founding director of the New York City Mayor's Office of Nightlife. We have Hawaii Mike, founder of Chef for Hire. And our moderator is Will Yakowicz. He's a staff writer from Forbes. All right, guys, take it away. Have a great panel.
Yeah, so, we're focusing on cannabis tourism. And, obviously New York's market is just getting up off the ground. But, the fact of the matter is that about 70 million people visit New York each year, and they spend $52 billion on food, drinks, entertainment. And, if you look at the industry, it's estimated about 17% of total sales are from tourists visiting dispensaries, and that's conservative. So, what New York State and what entrepreneurs here are looking towards is, kind of taking, a slice of that $50 billion pie. And so today we got Precious, we have Ariel, and we have Hawaii Mike, who we've already introduced. But, just so the audience can kind of understand who you guys are and what you guys do you want to start just a quick intro? Precious, do you want to start with yourself?
Hello, everyone. So my name is Precious Brown. I am the founder and half of EEWC, Entertaining and Educating with Cannabis, and Entertaining and Elevating with Cannabis. We're looking to knock down the doors and walls to the hospitality and lodging sector. We'll be a premier bed and breakfast in upstate New York.
Hey everyone, I'm Ariel Palitz, native New Yorker. Founding director of New York City's Mayor's Office of Nightlife, much like Dashida Dawson, the founding director of Cannabis NYC. I founded it in 2018 and built it from scratch and operated it, and recently resigned actually just about a month ago after building it, supporting it through the pandemic and through 2 mayors. But before I operated the Office of Nightlife, I also ran and operated a nightclub called Sutra Lounge in the Lower East Side, and just looking to bring my experience as a operator as well as someone in government to represent this emerging industry.
Peace. I'm Hawaii Mike, founder of Chef for Hire. We use the universal language of food to share the benefits of cannabinoids. And we also happen to be one of the first legacy operators to hit the legal dispensary shelves in New York's operations. So you can find us at all the dispensaries right now.
Well, to kind of kick it off, New York's legal marketplace is just getting up off the ground. But what do you guys see as the opportunity for cannabis tourism? And anybody can jump in. We can start with Mike if you want.
Well, I mean, New York City is known as the city that never sleeps. We are known around the world for our hospitality, for our nightlife, for our dining, and for how we entertain the world. And this is really just another leaf, so to speak, in that book on how New York entertains its locals as well as the world. Obviously, we know that although it is a new legal market, that the legacy market in New York City has always been extremely strong. This has been a very functional industry that grows and doses and moves it, and people who smoke it and socialize with it. So it's nothing really new as far as its existence within our communities and culture, but the ability to be able to publicly promote it and to put it in a New York way, to do a New York style clubs, restaurants, dispensaries, no one's really going to do it the way we do it. I think it's exciting. I think the world wants to know how New York shows up in this space, and people will come from all over the world to experience it.
Yeah, that's very smart. I like that. What about you, Precious?
Yeah, so we really have an opportunity to be proactive, to really service and provide hospitable moments to the canny curious, the novice, as well as the connoisseur. To Ariel's point, we've been doing this all along, right? And New York is known for the hospitality and the food and the wellness. The hospitality, the food, the wellness, the wine, and the weed. So it really is an opportunity to really just show, what we've been offering all along to the community. So it's there.
Yeah, nice. Mike?
Yeah, I was just going to say, the opportunities are definitely there. It's a matter of how do we turn it on, right? How do we turn the lights on or flip those switches to allow it to move from what we've already been doing to this legal kind of space?
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a good point that you guys are bringing up. Like, the whole idea that, the cannabis economy is new. Like, it's obviously not, right? What is new are the licenses, the aspect that it's above ground. And New York has always had its place. Obviously, like, if you grow some of the best weed in California, you're going to bring it to the best marketplace, which is New York. So yeah, I'm excited to see what New York and what you guys do. And I guess, to kind of dovetail off that, what is New York going to become under this new future of legal marijuana? Like, do you guys see it as the new Amsterdam? Forever, Amsterdam was the place if, you wanted to smoke weed legally, you could do that there. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so for me, I see it as not just the big green apple, but the big green state, right? So making sure that we are, paying homage to all of New York. So the opportunity is definitely there, not just for tourism, but for the entire spectrum. So it's already there.
Well, we were New Amsterdam before we were New York.
That's a really good
Big
point.
facts.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a full circle moment. Obviously it has an incredible opportunity to be a huge part of our ever-evolving identity. And I think we're always trying to be the most open, most accepting, the most liberal, the most socially justice, forward-thinking city in the world. That is who we are, is this melting pot of diverse realities and being able to accept all the ways in which people live in a way that does not criminalize and does not oppress. And the fact that cannabis is legal now and being folded into the hospitality and tourism industry is extremely encouraging. We need to make sure that we take all the lessons learned. Nightlife, I can say, has been a historically criminalized industry, not always appreciated for what it brought to the economy and to the culture, to the city, often very much enforced against and not supported, which is why the Office of Nightlife was created, to decriminalize this important industry. Cannabis, much the same, has been criminalized and not even a legal industry. Now, as it emerges as a legal industry, we have the opportunity to learn all the lessons on how we've interfaced wrongly and now rightly with the nightlife liquor licensing industry. And I think there's a lot to learn, which is great that Dashita Dawson is now within the government to be able to make sure that there's a watchdog to make sure that this industry is supported and appreciated and resourced and not overly enforced, and that there's safeguards and processes proactively in place to safeguard this industry from being stigmatized and overly restricted and not being allowed to be creative. Because that's really what it's going to take in order for New York's emerging industry to be number one, is to allow it to be itself.
To that point, New York's the capital of the globe. Like, we're gonna flip this in a great way if they allow us. Because, imagine all the different experiences you can already have in New York. Then add cannabis to it in that kind of legal environment. It's endless. right? We can go on and on and on. I don't think we have to be the new anybody. We could just continue to be New York.
Yeah, I like that. And I want to drill down on, Ariel, what you said. You know, your experience as a club owner and in the government, you know, what's important to get right when it comes to consumption lounges, when it comes to licensing, when it comes to supporting a newly legal industry?
I mean, for me, I really do think that the future, especially for tourism, is the idea of having successful consumption lounges and nightlife experiences that bring people together to socialize in a fun, casual, and real world way. I did run a nightclub for, 10 years, and although it was a liquor licensed establishment, we did, because it was an old school hip hop, reggae, Latin 80s kind of vibe, there were times where we did have to turn a blind eye, in a sense, and be cannabis friendly in order to be able to allow people to enjoy themselves in the way they want and not to go outside and jeopardize themselves and get arrested and so forth. So we have this incredible opportunity now to be able to create real social clubs where people can smoke and chill and listen to music and dance. And nobody does nightlife like New York. And to be able to include that element in those social spaces. But again, we have to make sure that we're managing complaints. Most enforcement is complaint driven. We have to make sure that the city and the state and the Department of Health are on board with allowing people to consume the way they do in their everyday lives, and to align the legislation with the real world way that people consume, because otherwise it will be a setup for failure or further criminalization of an industry that we're trying to legalize.
Yeah, that's smart. And, I kind of wanted to put this other question to you guys, like, the culture, cannabis culture has developed over decades underground, and now bringing it above ground, the government is applying rules and regulations to this culture, to these social folkways, to the way, even in, I find it kind of funny, I don't know what you guys think, but going to a dispensary is kind of an odd experience for me as a consumer, because I would always just get it delivered or meet somebody, at a bar or on the corner or something. So the whole kind of idea of the industry is, kind of, I know it's developing above ground, right? I guess going on a tangent, but can the culture, I guess, survive with rules and regulations? Or, what's that balance?
I think it's going to depend on how those rules and regulations come out, right? Like we were discussing before, all these things are happening. You can go to any club in New York and people are smoking. You can go to all kinds of places and it's happening. Restaurants are even happening. So it's a matter of how do we know that the things are already going on and allow them to bring those into this legal space. But again, if it's too restrictive, that's where we're going to get caught up because it's already happening. So it's like we all have to figure out a way to walk together and move forward.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And and that's kind of like my question, like, this has been happening, nightlife, cannabis and alcohol have been commingling forever. It's not, and now just the idea of like, well, what's the rules around it? Everybody kind of pretended like nobody smoked weed at night at a bar, right? And now that how do you regulate it? It's a challenge.
Yeah, so it's definitely a challenge, but to everyone's point, it's been happening where alcohol and cannabis has been in a marriage for a very long time. I just think it's about having that conversation about responsible consumption, no matter where you're having that experience at, and really getting back to the education of what you're consuming, whether it's alcohol or cannabis. So I feel like there's a place for it, but just especially within the tourism aspect of it, but just making sure that the onus in that conversation is there. Yeah.
Like, I want to ask whoever approved hatchets and hops, like, you can actually drink, get inebriated, and go throw weapons. Yeah. Like, show me the danger in smoking and drinking, or just smoking and eating, or eating infused food. Like, I don't see how you can move that, and we're at these conversations. You know what I'm saying?
I think it could only get more dangerous if it's like drink and drive, like throwing axes and drinking. But
the adrenaline you get from throwing an axe or like anything like that, and then you add in alcohol, that's fuel to the fire. Like, but we can't smoke and eat.
right.
I was
Ariel?
just going to say, I really think that, the true success of the future of hospitality and tourism really, I think, lies in the ability to align the regulations with the reality as much as possible in the way that people have historically enjoyed cannabis and socialized and gone out to venues, and also to allow the entrepreneurs, the nightlife and hospitality and chefs and restaurants, the flexibility and the guidelines to be able to put, again, that New York twist on it, and to be able to be creative and to really shine in this global hospitality space, and what is going to make us stand out and be unique. And so as long as there's that alignment, New York is always going to step up and do it better than everyone else.
Absolutely. And Precious, I wanted to talk about, wanted to ask you this. You worked at a really big consumption event at the Super Bowl. And, I wanted to hear about that and then also see if that model could ever work or will work in New York.
Yeah, so my partner and I, we were able to attend the first ever consumption park, and that was in Arizona in February, and it was an amazing time. To answer the question, yes, most certainly it could happen here, right? We are actually in the midst of working with upstate New York. I'm from, historically, it's called the Flower City, upstate in Rochester, New York, and so we're really working to make sure that we can help to reimagine consumption spaces by making sure that we have those intentional experiences where the community, to Ariel's point, can come and consume in spaces and do the things that we're already doing. So yeah, it's most certainly a possibility, and it's something that's coming down the pipeline. So you guys look for the on-site consumption 2024.
That's great. And you also want to bring a bud and breakfast to upstate. Can you tell us about your plans there?
Yes, so like I just said at the top, I'm looking to knock down the doors and walls to the hospitality and lodging sector. We're going to offer a premier, safe, sophisticated, all-inclusive space where we are able to just reimagine the consumption of cannabis one experience at a time, and then ultimately one stay at a time with the bud and breakfast. It will offer more of a concierge experience where we'll cater to not only the novice, but the connoisseur and the person that's I call them the candy closet. So we're really just wanting to make sure that, like I said, there's just a safe, discreet, sophisticated space for someone who wants to understand about a plant that we're consuming. We advocate that all cannabis is medicinal and sometimes used in a recreational way. So I think that, having that conversation with either the novice or the connoisseur, or like I said, the candy curious, is really going to help to break that stigma down and make sure that they have a good understanding. Yep.
Great. Cool. Thank you. And Mike, you've been running Chef for Hire for years underground, and I wanted to see how is your business translating in the legal market?
For us, I look at food as the future. My hope is that we can figure out how to do on-site consumption through food and do infused dining. And I think there's so many different layers and levels to that, right? Like I said before, there's 42,000 restaurants in New York alone that you can go and eat. And even if a few of them were able to do this, or even through the hotels, cannabis is a lifestyle, right? So how can we incorporate it into all of the lifestyle experiences that we have? Because if you're alive, you have an endocannabinoid system. So everywhere you go, cannabis can be a part of what you do, right? I think the difficult part is figuring out how do we take some existing things. Like if I wanted to go to a gym and have a cannabis trainer, or like I'm on a regimen and I utilize that, how do we figure out like the structure around those things? Like that's where it's going to get kind of difficult. So I think the transition, again, is going to go back to the regulations. How are they going to help us move in? And for me, in the meantime, it's like I'm going to do my packaged goods and get into the dispensaries and keep moving that direction to keep the brand out while we work to figure out what tourism and hospitality is going to look like.
Right. Yeah, I like that. And what do you guys think? Like, is I guess with 42,000 restaurants, like, will infused dining become mainstream, or do you see it more as a kind of fringe thing going on in the industry? What do you see?
I think it'll definitely become mainstream. I think again, everybody eats. Food's a universal language, right? So you have an opportunity to speak to people about this planet, educate them through something that they do every single day, right? So it normalizes it for them, right? It doesn't take something away. It brings it to them in a light where it's like, well, wait, oh, I could do that and just eat it, and I won't taste it, and I don't have to change everything I do and learn something new or start smoking or doing all this. So I think food is an incredible way, especially for people that are on the fringe, right? That are kind of looking over. So like, and we have to, because food, again, is such a necessity, and to be able to explain cannabinoids and share the benefits of them through another necessity is important to me.
Right. Yeah. Nice. Anybody else have thoughts about that?
So yeah, infused dinners, infused experiences, they're definitely here to stay. I think that it gets down to the heart of educating the consumer so that they're well aware of the strand. That goes along with breaking down the stigma and all of the harms that the government has done to make sure that we are afraid of a plant. So I think that, to your very valid point, it's just something that, we're going to take flight with infused dinners and infused experiences.
And, I was kind of thinking, upstate and Long Island are both known for wineries and craft beer. Where does cannabis fit into that? Like, do you guys envision, I know the Great Lakes is known for their wine and stuff. Like, will there be areas, like the black dirt earth, areas of Hudson Valley? Yeah, just where does cannabis fit in?
So I'll speak to upstate first. So for upstate, I'll speak to some of the sophisticated experiences that we've curated, right? So right now we're in the midst of doing something with Tricola Farms. It's called Ganja Garden Green Party. It's going to be our first business-to-business experience where we're networking with intention and purpose, and really just trying to make sure that we're able to bridge the gap from city to state to make sure that, if you see yourself as a contender in this market, if you want to be, applying for one of the licensures, you have an opportunity to, be aware of the different ancillary businesses that's going to take in order to get you there. So when you say, where is upstate in that, we're just really trying to make sure that we stay relevant, to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information so that we can be seen as contenders in the market as well.
No, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of similarities to the wine industry, right? You can go visit a vineyard and have that full experience. Why can't you go and visit a grow and do that same kind of thing? So you talk about tourism on that level. And then when you talk about craft breweries, I mean, hops and cannabis are cousins, right? So I think there's a lot of similarities in that. There's actually a commercial, I forget which brand it was, but if you turn the volume off, it could be a cannabis commercial, but it was a beer commercial. So, I mean, you're going to see mirrors. I mean, that's the thing. Cannabis goes everywhere, and it's already everywhere. It's just a matter of allowing us to kind of open the doors, turn on the lights, and, offer. There we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is funny. I was under some... do you call it a hop vine? I don't know. But I had this funny experience where it smelled like some of the terpenes smelled like weed. But yeah, and some beer will taste like cannabis too.
For sure.
Yeah. And I guess one thing I want to talk about, because I know California is kind of having a big issue with this, is, the majority of municipalities are opting out of in California, I think it's like 60%. It might be similar here. I know Long Island is like no on cannabis. I wanted to see if you guys could talk about the challenges of operating a business where it's a patchwork. Like in this town, what you're doing could be illegal, while on the other side, in a different town, it might be legal.
Yeah, that's a good question. So especially for me, for the MRTA, we're going for an on-site consumption license, and you can have up to 3 locations. And so I'm in upstate New York in Rochester, and if you look at the municipalities, you have your city, your town, and your village, right? And so, exactly as you said, well, we're about 60% of the state has opted out, and so it's just a matter of dealing with your local legislators and letting them know that you want to work for them. That you want to operate in this space wherever, whatever municipality has opted in. So, also understanding the zoning and the regulations that they have built for their city, town, or village. I can say that, I've run into some roadblocks, but also knowing that, there's a municipality affairs as well, that if that municipality is making it very hard for you to do business in, you do have someone that you can report them to. I'm not saying to open up those doors whatsoever, but I'm saying that you do have someone that you can at least get some advice from. Right now, just looking at the local municipalities, it's about, again, understanding the zoning and the regulations that they have for that municipality outside of the regulations for like on-site consumption or the specific licensures.
Ariel, do you have any insight into just the unique challenges, or having worked in government and and being on the other side in the private sector? Yeah, what is I feel like it's a very unique, or maybe it isn't unique. I know there are dry towns that don't allow liquor, but how do you see this issue?
Well, this is a very new and emerging, field as far as legal cannabis and all of the rules and regulations that are coming out. Even though hospitality and liquor licensing is, there to draw upon lessons learned, this is really everyone. It's sort of like a level playing field. Everyone who's emerging as a new operator, a new legal grower, or perhaps even an entrepreneur, all the rules and regulations are just, leaking and eking out, and everyone's sort of learning as they're going. And so it is sort of this level playing field, and it's important and good that, for example, the mayor's office having this dedicated office of cannabis that is a non-enforcement office that is dedicated to educating and keeping people informed all along the way in order to get it right and to minimize the mistakes as much as is possible. And I think it's, what I'm hoping again, is that the legacy market is really seen as the resource for the rules and the regulations and the guidance, because it's not something that necessarily has to be built from scratch. It's important that the legacy market is informing the legislation, again, in order for it to reflect the reality of how things have been operating. And I think once we get there, and I am very optimistic that we will, that, bringing legacy people to the table with the legislators and crafting it together in that way, that the future of hospitality and tourism is going to be incredibly bright. The sky is the limit. Again, with restaurants, with cannabis consumption, supper clubs, dance clubs, infusing it into all social experiences in a way that is safe, and in a way, because really, to your point, the stigma of cannabis historically and all the fear that has been generated in the misinformation and miscommunication is at times informing the laws, overly restrictive rather than giving it creative space to be able to create great social experiences that people will want to travel here and everywhere to experience. And so I'm very optimistic about the future, and I think those who are entrepreneurs and trying to develop it have a responsibility to stay on top of all the changing rules and regulations, to participate in the process, and then it's also up to the consumer as well as the entrepreneur to educate everyone, right? This is so new. All the strains and the dosages and the different ways of consuming. This is not your old high school joint, right? This is a new world, and people are sort of, can easily overdose in a sense, not in a dangerous sense, but taking more than you want to. So it's important that we're using these spaces, these social spaces, as places to educate and make sure that people understand the space and understand the plant and what's possible.
Yeah, I think that's smart. And while you were talking, something popped in my head, and you might have a better memory of this, but I remember at one point there was a law in New York passed, or maybe like a regulation for bars where bartenders couldn't touch like a lemon and lime with their bare hands.
I mean, it's still that way. It's
right?
the Department of Health, and you don't really technically want people touching your lemons, but
Sure, but I feel like at one point bartenders were, they're like, we're using tongs and stuff, but
Right.
now if you get a vodka tonic, they're throwing a lime in and with their hands. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
You're not wrong. I mean, again, alcohol has historically been the social lubricant that has been legal and that has been the economic driver for social spaces, and pushing drinks and so forth is basically how bars and clubs make their money, even though you have a dance floor. Now we're introducing the cannabis into hopefully those social spaces, and you want to be able to have those rules and regulations. It's important for everyone's health and well-being. And also, I think it's different in a sense that because it's a medicine and it elevates, and all of these things, these social spaces really need to, while they're entertaining, also be educating people on all of the potential of this plant, and that not to just see it as an alcohol replacement where you get messed up or lubricate and dance, and what it can be that, but it's so much more. And we have an opportunity to use social spaces as places where people can look out for each other, educate, and learn more about how this plant can elevate social spaces and tourism.
Right. Got to fly over here. So we have only a couple minutes left, but I wanted to pitch this question to each of you. 10 years from now, like, what's your vision of cannabis tourism and nightlife in New York?
Everything we're doing right now in the open.
Yes. Just decriminalizing regular human behavior and being able to have realistic regulation and have it just seem as natural as possible. Right now it's awkward. We're like in our early dating phase and everyone's just sort of awkward and not knowing what to say, what to do. But in 10 years' time, we're going to be deeper into this relationship, and I think a lot of the fear and the stigma and the misinformation is going to be addressed, and we're going to be able, I think at the end of the day, and something we haven't really mentioned, is that, New York decriminalized this and legalized this because of the social equity, and so that you could smoke a joint on the street and to not be people getting arrested and so forth. And the future is about making sure that New York is an even more socially equitable and freer space where people can be themselves and do what they want to do without the fear of being arrested or being criminalized or marginalized because of it. And so I think just more freedom in our social spaces to be able to use the plant as we want and to be able to monetize it and socialize it in a natural way and making it fair for everyone.
So in 10 years, I see the plant as being decolonized cannabis, right? Making sure that we are able to really give the plant back to the public and have a good understanding about education and advocacy. And I also see tourism growing for the nation, not just the state of New York. So, yeah.
That's great. That's beautiful. Yeah, I think, one other thought is, New York, I think what they really did a good job was legalizing it so broadly where it's akin to smoking a cigarette or drinking a beer. And I think, after a couple years, once, society, but also visitors kind of get used to this new future, it'll just be like that.
Mellow out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's a great question. So she said, should alcohol and cannabis be together? Should they commingle in the same space?
I mean, they kind of already are,
Right.
like, if we're being realistic about it. And so I think it's more, I mean, throw the question, like I said before, should alcohol and weapons be together? Like, that sounds way crazier than should alcohol and weed be together. And they have alcohol and weapons, so I think we can figure that out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, it's already happening, and it's always been happening. And I think, again, the closer the legislation and regulations can get to the reality of how people already socialize and use it, it's going to be less of a setup for failure and a less of a setup for criminalizing people as we're trying to make this legal. So it needs to be aligned with the reality of how people are in order for it to be maximizingly successful, I think.
Because otherwise they're going to keep doing it, and then you're going to be criminalized for doing what you already been
Along
doing.
with the alignment, we also need to keep at the forefront the education of it, right? So cannabis is medicinal. All cannabis is medicinal, and sometimes used in a recreational way can also be abused. Just like if you eat too much food, you can become bulimic or anorexic. You consume too much alcohol, you can become an alcoholic, right? So we have to put onus back onto the consumer, back onto the adult, but that goes with making sure that we are educated on the strand and truly what cannabis is. So I think that to answer the question, it's cannabis and alcohol, it's mingling. It's in a very tight marriage. But again, if we do everything that we can do to make sure that the consumer is aware about the consumption, then I feel like as adults we'll be able to make the right decision.
Great, cool. All right, well, I think that's it. Thank you guys again for
Thank you.
coming by and listening.
Thank you.